is Friday, October 7th, and this is a Fox News alert. Monster Hurricane Matthew bearing down on Florida. Right now, you're looking live from Florida as the heart of the storm slams the southern states.
More than 26 million Americans now in the path as the deadly storm makes its way up the East Coast after killing more than 300 people in Haiti and devastating the Caribbean.
Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina already under a state of emergency. And with winds up to 120 miles per hour, more than 250,000 people are already without power in Florida. A number only expected to grow with the potential of storm surges up to 10 feet.
Unbelievable. Florida Governor Rick Scott issuing a dire warning that this is no joke.
If you're in an evacuation zone, get out. This is not something you should take a chance with. Time's running out. Leave. There's no excuses. Evacuate, evacuate, evacuate.
To have someone drive by this morning and go, you have to leave, and there's going to be a 20-foot wall of water in your house, it was pretty scary.
Right now, the storm is a Category 3 hovering right near Florida.
We have live Fox News team coverage for you this morning from Florida to Georgia.
So let's begin with senior meteorologist Janice Dean in the Weather Center. She's tracking the very latest. You know, Janice, we talk about how it's gone down to this Cat 3, but that's sustained winds of 120 miles per hour and gusts way more than that.
Yeah, and you have to remember, to put it in perspective, that Katrina, when it made landfall, was a Category 3. So you can't just measure a storm by the category. Sandy, which a lot of folks across the Northeast say is a benchmark for one of the worst storms they've ever experienced, was a Cat 1. So again, because this is a Category 3, we can't let our guard down. Still 120 mile per hour sustained winds, and the strongest of the winds, thank goodness, have remained offshore, but we're thinking that's going to change within the next couple of hours, and you can see that well-defined eye, and there's the strongest of the winds right now. And then we're going to be talking about the potential for storm surge, 6 to 11 foot storm surge, which could be devastating along the coast of central and north Florida as well as Georgia because of the coastline. So we have a lot of miles to go with this storm system. A new advisory coming out at 5 a.m., which will give us a lot of details on the track, on the coordinates, where the storm is going, and the new forecast models being worked in as well. So the storm, again, just off the coast of Melbourne, Florida. There's, of course, Cape Canaveral. This actually could take a direct hit from this storm, which would be historic. Let's look at the wind gusts. Again, we are dealing with a major hurricane, and the core of the winds right there, and it looks like it comes very close in the next couple of hours. Will it make landfall? That's not really the story. It's about the strongest core of winds, whether or not they come onshore or not. And that is the potential for, obviously, destruction and the rain threat and the storm surge. You know, with loss of life when it comes to hurricanes, storm surge and the flooding is what kills most people, not the winds. And we are concerned with the storm surge and the flooding. And then, ladies, we're going to watch this as it makes its way offshore and then perhaps makes a beeline towards Florida again this weekend. Back to you.
Sounds like it could be days.
Yeah, unreal. Thank you so much, Janice. We'll certainly check back with you.
Thank you, Janice.
You got it.
And as Janice was just saying, it is this intense winds, the torrential rain wreaking havoc in Melbourne, Florida at this hour.
And that is where we find Phil Keating, who's been out in the brunt of it for us all night long. Phil, what are you experiencing now? I know you could barely hear us earlier.
Yeah, well, it's getting progressively worse, although we are in a bit of a lull just at this present minute or two. We did just lose all of the street lights a few minutes ago, but they are back on. So there was a big flash down the road. It could have been lightning, or I thought it was maybe a transformer blowing, but with the lights back on, and now here we go. Here comes a stronger gust of wind and rain right now. You know, the eye of the storm, the center, and the big hurricane winds are still offshore, and they're just still a little southeast of where we are. So Hurricane Matthew is still marching north up the coastline. This is US 1, and you can really see all of the wind and rain just howling southbound down the street as we are on the western side of the hurricane. That's going to be the counterclockwise spin motion. And Down in Miami-Dade County, that's where this all started, in Broward County this morning, in Palm Beach County. There was about 25,000 people that ended up losing power down there, but power crews are really quickly restoring it down there. But now, as it has headed further north and the eye of the storm has moved closer to the coastline and bringing those stronger winds to the coastline, we've been getting certainly gusts of about 70. Over on the beach, even higher. That's about 3 or 4 miles east of us. Vero Beach reporting 71 mile an hour wind gusts. Inland is going to be getting a lot of wind. So Brevard County, where we are here, the Space Coast, 25,000 people without power right now. People in Jacksonville already have lost power. And here's what the governor says about what the northern half of the state still has in store.
You're going to lose power if you're on the East Coast. There's no question you will lose power. You're going to lose power. We just don't know how long. We are going to lose power. Millions of Floridians will be without power.
And some people from the governor's office and the Emergency Operations Center up in Tallahassee even suggesting people may not lose power for just 3 days or 5 days or a week. Could be 2 weeks without power, and that will make things extremely miserable for that many Floridians. Back to you.
All right, Phil, stay safe out there. That cannot be easy.
Well, that's the thing about these storms. I mean, you have these powerful gusts and rains that come down, and then you have a moment like that where there's just a little bit of peaceful
That's
conditions.
why it's so dangerous.
Well, just north of Melbourne in Daytona, streets already underwater, and the worst is yet to come with a storm surge of at least 11 feet expected.
Let's turn now to Leland Vittert. And Leland, as we've been talking about, it's the wind, it is the flooding, it is the rain. That's what is causing so much damage here potentially. And where you are in Daytona, they could see catastrophic flooding.
Well, exactly, ladies. Good morning to you. And that's really the fear out here. The wind is what's impressive to sort of stand up against as we're getting the first real serious tropical storm force gusts up here. We're just inland from the beach area, and we've retreated across the intercoastal waterway. Still, that probably won't mean much when it comes to the issue of flooding. And if you get a second to look behind me, you're going to be able to see right there is the intercoastal waterway. Big-time whitecaps chopping up right there. And already here at this condo complex, the water has come up over the seawall and is starting to lap up. From there, it's probably only a couple of feet more before these lower-level units here at this condo building floods. This story is repeated dozens, if not hundreds of times, up and down each and every block here in central and north central Florida. The wind also becoming a much bigger issue, not only here in Daytona, but also in places like Orlando and cities like that in the surrounding suburbs there, where they're worried not only about rain damage and flooding. We've already had at least one road around here closed, a major road because of flooding. They're also worried here about the issue of wind damage to homes and those kinds of things. About 4 a.m. right now. We expect the eye a little bit later than Phil does farther south. So somewhere between noon and 2 is when the worst conditions here will happen. That's a good 8 hours from now to continue to blow and continue to cause damage. Most of the people over there where you see those lights have evacuated, and that's the beach side, if you will, and the police were very clear that as conditions get worse, they will not be able to make it over the bridges to go try and find people if they're in trouble. The police chief saying it's not a matter of if people die in this storm, but when. The sheriff talking about how simply this is going to be an issue of negligence if people die because they were warned so many times about getting out before this storm got too bad. Most people did. Shelters around here full, certainly all hotels have been filled up. The question going forward is just how close to Daytona the eye of this storm comes, and therefore those most intense winds come. And they come in bands. Right now we have one of the stronger bands we've seen here. Then it'll let up for a little bit. Then you'll get heavy rain squall lines. And as the eye gets closer and closer to us up the coast, and what is such an unusual hurricane, then all of a sudden the rain bands get more intense, the wind gets more intense, and then it just turns into rain and wind all the time, ladies.
All right, stay safe out there, Leland, in Daytona for us this morning. Leland, thank you.
Projected to kind of go right in at Cape Canaveral, so we'll keep an eye on that. The deadly storm front and center in the race for the White House.
Yeah, just 2 days now before the second debate, Donald Trump hits the trail showing support for people in the path of the storm, while Hillary Clinton stays behind closed doors.
Peter Ducey is live for us in Washington, D.C. with the latest from the campaign trail. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Good morning. Donald Trump was up in one swing state last night, New Hampshire, but he was giving a lot of attention to voters in another, Florida.
To all of my friends in Florida, please know that we are praying for you and everyone in the path. You got to take care of yourself. You've got to get out of the area. You've got to listen. You have a great governor, Governor Scott, and you got to listen because it could be a really, really bad one. So it's going to be a rough couple of days and maybe beyond that, but we'll see what the path ultimately is.
So Hurricane Matthew, another variable for the candidates and their campaigns to deal with the Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook now urging officials to give people who have had to drop everything and hunker down more time to register as new Florida voters.
Our first priority on Hurricane Matthew is that people are safe. We are hoping and expecting is that officials in Florida will adapt deadlines to account for the storm. The voter registration deadline in Florida is October 11th, and our hope would be that a little bit more time will be given.
And every vote in a place like Florida could make a big difference. The latest Rasmussen poll shows Trump 43, Clinton 41. Each are preparing behind closed doors for their second debate on Sunday night in St. Louis. There have been some questions about whether or not the storm was going to cause the debate to be postponed or canceled, but we did get word overnight, no changes to the schedule. Back to you, Neil.
All right, Peter, thank you. This will surely come up, the debate on Sunday night. Politics are always involved in these storms.
Thank you very much, Peter. Well, the time now is 12 minutes after the top of the hour. A race to escape in Georgia as a state of emergency is declared overnight.
When all of a sudden the house starts coming down out there at the beach or something, then you start wondering, well, maybe I made the wrong decision. Well, that's too late.
Sure is. We're live in Savannah where mass evacuations are now underway.
The monster storm now downgraded overnight to a Category 3, but the danger is just beginning. Janice Dean tracking Matthew's brand new path. That is next. That is Hurricane Matthew lashing Florida right now, leaving a path of destruction.
Millions could lose power. Could be up to 2 weeks as the monster storm makes its way up the Space Coast, dumping rain, packing winds up to 120 miles per hour.
The National Weather Service warning of catastrophic storm surges that could bring immense human suffering.
Now, the storm could make landfall near Cape Canaveral within the next few hours.
Senior meteorologist Janice Dean in the Weather Center tracking the latest here. And Janice, it seems like this is really an hour-by-hour storm you have to track.
Yes, we are doing nowcasting as we speak. And we are getting reports that we are now seeing and feeling hurricane force gusts along the coast of Florida as that eye wall gets really close to the Space Coast and Cape Canaveral, as you mentioned. Category 3 storm, brand new update coming, and we will get new coordinates and the track of the storm as well as how powerful it is because there is a sign that this is still strengthening. And then what happens, we're going to be dealing with this storm into Friday for the Georgia coastline. We're worried about, as you mentioned, storm surge and flooding. And then as we get into the weekend, perhaps a recurve. But for now, we have hours and hours to go of this huge hurricane, Category 3 hurricane, and they really have no record of something like this happening across the Florida coastline. So it's really unprecedented. But the storm surge, this is the #1 killer, is water when it comes to hurricanes. And storm surge of 10 feet plus along this vulnerable coastline, especially Georgia and the Carolinas, that could be devastating for them. So we still have a lot of the dangerous part of the storm to go in the next 12 to 24 hours, ladies.
Yeah, a long way to go. Right, we'll check back in with you shortly, Janice. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Janice. Well, in Georgia, meantime, as you just heard Janice mention, residents along the coast being urged to leave immediately.
Homes and businesses now boarded up, and with just a few hours until impact, officials say waiting out the storm could have deadly consequences.
Caroline Shively is live for us in Savannah with some new information on the evacuations there. Caroline, what are you hearing?
Good morning, Heather and Abby. We are hearing the buses start rolling again at 6 a.m. today. They want the last few stragglers out of here. To the east of 95, where we are right now, it is mandatory evacuations. The people still here will have 6 hours to get on those buses to go inland. And after that, the mayor and the governor say that the first responders are going to go home, gather their things and their families, and they're going to be out of here. So tonight, when this storm hits the Georgia coast, there won't be anyone to come rescue you. That's why they have these buses running, and they want everyone out. Here's what the mayor had to say.
You've got people that will not move and will not go, but then when all of a sudden the house starts coming down out there at the beach or something, then you start wondering, well, maybe I made the wrong decision. Well, that's too late.
And think about the institutional knowledge that is lacking here in Georgia. The last major hurricane, a Cat 3 or above, to hit this state was in 1898. The last hurricane of any kind to hit here was 1979. That was David. It was a very weak hurricane. We are dealing with a very different situation here. Georgia is incredibly vulnerable because of all of the inlets, because of the low-lying areas. We're only about 15 meters above sea level here in Savannah, guys, and further inland could be looking at some ugly things too. Because we have Florida to the south and North Carolina a bit of ways away, they normally take the brunt of these storms. So this will be a new experience for anyone we've talked to. No one knows what will happen when a hurricane hits, but they'll be finding out tonight.
Savannah, very historic area there, so hopefully they will be spared the brunt of it. Thank you, Caroline.
Thanks, Caroline. All right, the time is now 20 minutes after the hour, and capitalizing on a catastrophe, Hillary Clinton now accused of playing politics with panic.
The Democratic nominee now pulling ads from the Weather Channel after being slammed for exploiting a tragedy. What her campaign has to say about it up next. We're back with a Fox News alert. Hurricane Matthew unleashing fury on Florida at this hour. The monster storm is just miles off the coast of Melbourne, and it could make landfall in just hours.
More than 270,000 people are already without power, and it could be weeks before it is turned back on. The U.S. military now on standby, mobilizing more than 4,500 guardsmen in 4 states.
4 bases along the coast will serve as hubs where search and rescue missions can be staged by FEMA, and $11 million has been designated for disaster relief.
Hopefully not all of that is needed. All right, to politics now, and Hillary Clinton's campaign scrambling to weather its own storm of criticism. The Democratic nominee accused now of capitalizing on a catastrophe by buying ad time on the Weather Channel.
And Jackie Ibanez here with the backlash and the campaign's quick about face. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning, ladies. It always somehow comes back to politics, huh? Hillary Clinton evacuating Florida's airwaves by yanking more than $63,000 worth of political ads set to air on the Weather Channel this week. The move comes after a raging storm of critics accusing Clinton of intentionally targeting victims to exploit a catastrophe for political gain. Donald Trump's son Eric didn't hold back when describing Clinton's intentions as, quote, evil.
I'm a guy, who maybe in a certain crazy way believes in karma, and there's something pretty evil and sick about that, if you ask me. And that's their playbook. This is typical politicians for you.
RNC Chairman Reince Priebus calling Clinton out on Twitter, saying, quote, pulling these ads after getting caught won't cut it. Hillary Clinton should apologize for using storm for votes. Clinton's campaign passing it off as an honest mistake.
It's unfortunate that Chairman Priebus is trying to politicize the hurricane. We don't think that the voters in Florida need this election to get mixed up in their efforts to get information on this storm.
Those political ads will run after the storm has passed through, but it's unclear what damage they've already done to Clinton in a narrowing race in the Sunshine State. Heather?
All right, Jackie Ibanez.
Timing is everything in politics. Thank you, Jackie.
Well, the time now is 26 minutes after the top of the hour, and monster Hurricane Matthew barreling towards the East Coast with more than 26 million people in its path. More than 170,000, they are already without power.
Holy Toledo. I guess we're going to lose power.
Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina all under a state of emergency at this hour. Our live Fox News coverage up and down the East Coast continues next. It is Friday, October 7th. This is a Fox News alert. Hurricane Matthew showing no sign of letting up after viciously ripping through the Caribbean, killing at least 300 people in Haiti.
Now, as the eye of the storm looms over Florida and the East Coast, President Obama declares states of emergency in Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. The governors there now issuing dire warnings to the residents.
This can kill you, and we cannot save you.
We can't take you by the hand and bring you to the upstate. We can't take you by the hand and say we need to get you out of there. I am begging you at this point.
Cannot find sandbags right now.
Just boarded up the best I could and did what I could to get by.
We have a house under construction. We have a house that's right here on the water, and we kind of said goodbye to it.
26 million people now lie in the storm's path, more than 250,000 already without power.
And we have live Fox News team coverage for you up and down the East Coast.
We begin, though, with senior meteorologist Janice Dean tracking a brand new path in the Weather Center. Janice, what is the latest?
We get the new advisory in just minutes, and of course we'll bring it to you live. But already seeing those hurricane force winds now at Vero Beach, 74 miles per hour. And you can see this storm is coming very close to the shoreline. See that band right there, the yellows and oranges? That is the strongest winds with the heaviest rain and the potential storm surge as it moves up the coastline. So 120 mile per hour sustained winds, strong Category 3 storm, and a very low pressure, something that you would typically see in a stronger hurricane, maybe Cat 4 or even a low-end Cat 5. So this is intact. The structure is intact, and now we're starting to see the center of these very strong winds moving onshore, getting close to the shore of Cape Canaveral. And if we have a landfall of a hurricane of a Category 3 on Cape Canaveral, that's historic. 10 million people, over 10 million people still under hurricane warnings, and we've got tens of thousands now that don't have power, and that is going to be ongoing as we go through the day today. So let's take a look at the track again. New track coming up in moments, but we do think that this actually could re-strengthen a little bit as the core of the storm remains offshore, and we've got very warm water. The Gulf Stream is here, so that's why we could see the potential of a little bit of strengthening and then curving. And I mean, storm surge of 6 to 11 feet onshore of the Georgia coastline could be devastating for them. So that's also something we're going to be watching. And then into the Carolinas, where we have a brush here of perhaps a strong Category 2 storm. What happens after that? It recurves and then maybe comes back. It's something we're going to have to watch. But let's take a look at the future radar. Again, the center of the core of the winds coming onshore, perhaps for a duration of 24 to 36 hours as it makes its way up the coastline into Georgia and then into the Carolinas. This is Saturday and Sunday, and the rainfall with this could be pretty epic for this region, upwards of 10, even 12 or more rainfall depending on where the center of the storm goes. So keep in mind that the flooding, the water is what kills people out of these hurricanes, not the winds.
Storm surge, and expecting a lot of that.
Yeah, Janice, we'll check in with you shortly. Thank you.
Yep.
And all the power outages. I mean, you just think about those people right now.
Yeah, Daytona Beach preparing for the worst as Hurricane Matthew marches closer by the minute.
Streets already underwater, as you can see this morning, and the worst is still yet to come.
Leland Vittert live for us in Daytona, where we could see some catastrophic flooding, and you were in some strong winds earlier, Leland.
Ladies, indeed, and the wind has gotten stronger, and we are a long way from the worst that is just about to come in about 8 or 9 hours or so. The winds have picked up considerably since the last time we talked, and you can kind of get a sense of how bad they are. If you turn your head, you can't quite lean into them all the way, a little bit, and it kind of lifts you up, but it doesn't quite hurt yet when the rain pellets really hit your face super hard. And once you get into hurricane force winds, that's when it really feels like you're just being sandblasted out here. We're actually a good couple of miles inland, and it is still this powerful. We decided not to go out to the outer islands yet. We have probably going to do that in a couple of hours. Give you a sense about what we were talking about when it comes to flooding. Right now we've got standing water here. This is low tide, but pretty soon the storm surge combined with the high tide right around noon. Local reports here say that much of where I'm standing now will be underwater, probably up about to here or so. So the first floor of this condo building that we're taking shelter next to, pretty much is guaranteed to be flooded, as are a number of the hotels, all the low-lying houses along the beach. And as Janice pointed out, it's the water that police are most worried about at times like this, because the wind people can stay inside from, the wind people can be in shelters from, but once the storm leaves is when many people end up either severely hurt, dead, or stranded, and forcing police to come out and find them, because the wind and the water combined, they knock down power lines. Many of the power lines around here are strung up above ground. Towards the beach, they're below ground or buried. Here, they're up, and you get a sense of what's happening to these palm trees behind me. This is just the very early part of the wind, and still the palm trees are swaying. Palm trees are built to sway. Telephone poles, electrical lines, those kinds of things are not built to sway. And when those power lines break and end up and combine with the flooding, that's when you get big electrified puddles and those kinds of things that have proven so deadly in the past. And so many people who are here have just not experienced a hurricane. They moved here in the past 10 years and have no idea of the dangers. And that's what is truly terrifying to first responders right now. Back to you guys.
You're a trooper, Leland. Stay safe out there. Unbelievable, those winds. And he said he was inland.
That storm surge is not just the surge itself. Then you also have to add in the rain and then add in the rivers that will be rising. And it's
and the flooding for days. Well, just south of Daytona and Melbourne, the Category 3 hurricane is wreaking havoc as it churns just miles off the coast.
Phil Keating has been out in the storm all night long with the latest. Phil, how does it look there?
Well, you can see how black it is. It is pitch black. This is 4:35 in the morning, and the power is now out. Not only at our hotel, all of the street lights, they fluctuated off and on several times, but it seemed to be a big flash, and that's been it. So I think this is going to be the beginning of many hours, if not several days, of no electricity in this part of Brevard County. In fact, there was 25 to 30,000 people in the county as of an hour or two ago that had no power. About 250,000 Floridians no power around the state, and it could be days, if not weeks, of no electricity, which will make life absolutely miserable for all of the people who are not only dealing with damage when they return to their homes or emerge from their homes sometime later today after the weather starts to improve. If you don't have electricity and air conditioning in Florida in the month of October, you're not really a happy camper by any stretch of the imagination. The wind bands and the rain bands, I believe you can see it in the light. It is strong, and could get even stronger over the next hour as the center of the storm gets closest to Melbourne. Back to you.
All right, Phil Keating for us there in Melbourne. Thanks, Phil. All right, so turning to politics now. The deadly storm now front and center in the race for the White House.
Just 2 days before the second debate, Donald Trump hits the trail showing support for people in the path of the storm, while Hillary Clinton stays behind closed doors.
Peter Doocy is live in Washington, D.C. with the latest from the campaign trail. Peter, good morning.
Good morning. Late last night, we heard the second presidential debate in St. Louis on Sunday will not be postponed or canceled. The Commission on Presidential Debates says the show will go on despite the expected cleanup in the Southeast over the weekend. We did see Donald Trump on the trail last night in New Hampshire, and he spent a lot of time talking about Florida.
I want to send our thoughts, our hearts are with all of the people and prayers to the millions in the path of what's now known as Hurricane Matthew. We have a lot of friends in Florida, a lot of buildings, a lot of investments in Florida, a lot of great employees in Florida. To the folks in Haiti and all over, we're going to be helping you, we'll be with you, and we send our best wishes and prayers.
Meanwhile, the Clinton campaign has been walking a fine line, calling for caution, but also calling for an extension of some deadlines they think could help their side.
Our first priority on Hurricane Matthew is that people are safe. We are hoping and expecting is that officials in Florida will adapt deadlines to account for the storm. The voter registration deadline in Florida is October 11th, and our hope would be that a little bit more time will be given.
The governor now says no more time will be given. The deadline will not be extended. We also do not expect to see Trump or Clinton today. They're both getting ready for Sunday's town hall format debate, which the Trump team told me yesterday they think gives them an edge because they think that kind of a format where voters are asking questions would benefit whichever candidate gives a more unfiltered answer. Back to you.
And Trump apparently doing a little more preparation this time around, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I did want to add to this, though, because it's just crossed. We've been watching Governor Rick Scott. He's been monitoring the storm, and he says just 4 minutes ago, the eye wall of Hurricane Matthew is now within 5 miles of the central Florida coast. Extremely close there, so be aware and stay safe.
Stay safe. Well, the time is currently 40 minutes after the hour, and Hurricane Matthew leaving hundreds of thousands of people in the dark in Florida as the storm bears down on the southern states. The monster storm spinning off the coast in Florida. Janice Dean is live in the Fox News Weather Center with a brand new track. That is next.
And staying safe, Kurt, the cyber guy here with the apps that you need to weather the storm. He joins us live up next.
Holy Toledo. I guess we're going to lose power. Blowing.
Holy Toledo says it all. Hundreds of thousands of people waking up without power as deadly Hurricane Matthew hovers over Florida. It is the most powerful storm, this is Jensen Beach in Florida, to tear through the area in more than a decade, with storm surges expected to top 11 feet and winds up to 120 miles per hour. Senior meteorologist Janice Dean is in the Weather Center for us with some new information. Janice, we just said it's about 5 miles off the coast. I'm sure closer now.
Yeah, we're starting to feel those hurricane force winds along the coast, Heather. 74 mile per hour right now in Vero Beach, and we're also getting reports just outside of Melbourne with over 80 mile per hour winds. So you can see the core of the hurricane force winds are now coming on shore, and we expect that trend to continue moving to the north and west. New advisory coming out really moments from now. Here's the track as we know it, coming very close, maybe a landfall over north or central Florida, and then curving across Georgia and the Carolinas, and then out to sea, hopefully, although some of the forecast models show a recurve back towards the Florida coastline this weekend. Let's take a look at the track again. Friday through Saturday, really a period of 24 and 36 hours with a major hurricane just kissing the coastline and bringing the potential for not only hurricane force winds, but storm surge, as you mentioned, 6 to 11 feet, which would be devastating for some of these areas, especially along Georgia and the Carolinas. And then the rainfall upwards of 12 inches through the next couple of days, which also could be very dangerous. Heather, back to you.
So dealing with the flooding and then the high winds. Thank you so much, Janice. We'll check back with you.
Okay. Well, Hurricane Matthew picking up speed as it barrels towards the southeast coast. A Category 3 storm already claiming the lives of over 300 people. So how can you stay safe? Well, Kurt, the cyber guy, is here with the best apps you can download right now to stay safe. Kurt, thanks for being with us this morning. And this is so important for people, as Janice was just saying. It seems like an hour-by-hour storm. These apps, you say, could save lives.
Well, I'll tell you something. I rode Katrina out. Abby, good morning to you. I was in Katrina, New Orleans. Your mind goes somewhere else. When you're caught in a storm, you're trying to make heads or tails of what's up and down at some point because you're up for hours on end. And apps like these will really pay off, especially now. And if you've got loved ones anywhere up and down the coast right now, take a look at what the American Red Cross. Well, first of all, this is what Janice was saying about monitoring the winds. This is My Radar app. If you want to talk to a geeky pilot, they're going to tell you this is the app they use to really monitor the weather. It shows the weather, the wind patterns in this, and you can layer whatever you want. But the American Red Cross, this app right here, these people have gone to town with an app that just a few weeks ago it was updated. This is called Hurricane from the Red Cross. This allows you to put in all your loved ones. It allows you to track the storm. It also really puts your mind at ease and gives you an idea of not just preparing, not just what to do during the storm, but what's about to happen next is what to do after the storm.
Can it show you where shelters are as well?
It has a list of shelters right here near you. It could obviously, it's location based, or you could look up a loved one. It'll suggest for a loved one whether they should or shouldn't be in the shelter, and then really just getting an idea of what to do ahead and then after. Look at this. It gives you just step by step. Here's what you need to do before you go back to your house. Check, make sure that it's safe. Watch the power lines. Real basic stuff that when you're out and just in your mind's in another frame of being, this really helps. Hurricane Pro, the real winner if you've got an iPhone or an Android device. But this one is a version of this called, and this Janice will know because this is a Weather Geek app. This is Hurricane HD. This thing will cost you $3.99. The other one is $2.99. It's worth the money. You can get it for free if you want to have the commercials on it. But this, this just really is what a Weather Geek is looking at right now. This tells you exactly where the storm is. It gives you the kind of forecasting that Janice has at her fingertips. This is anyway, of all the hundreds of weather apps, these three, or four, I added a fourth one in there, are amazing.
And for $3.99, if your power goes out, this could be crucial.
And the other ones are free. I mean, everything here is free that I talked about, unless you want the pro version that'll skip the ads.
Super helpful. Kirk Knudsen, thanks for being with us this morning.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, Heather?
The state of Florida also sending out emergency push notifications on people's cell phone as well. Well, the time now is about 10 minutes until the top of the hour. Monster Matthew moving in, the deadly storm bearing down on the state of Florida right now. Strong winds combined with heavy rains already making a mess in the Sunshine State. We're live on the ground in the crosswinds of the storm. Up next. We are back with a Fox News alert. The eye wall of Hurricane Matthew now within 5 miles of Central Florida, bringing with it the highest winds and the worst weather that Matthew has to offer.
Shayla Reeves from our affiliate WTVT is live in Davenport, Florida. And Shayla, the major concern right now really are the winds and the heavy rains. What's the latest where you are?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. The major concern for folks in Davenport and throughout Polk County, Florida, is what's going to happen with all of this wind. We have continued to see gust after gust of wind throughout the morning. The ground is already saturated from a lot of heavy rain in recent weeks, and now we are expecting a little bit more rain here in relation to this system. So Davenport is just one of the locations throughout Polk County, Florida, about 100 miles away from the East Coast. We can tell you people have been here throughout the overnight hours seeking shelter at locations, including this one at a high school just behind me. We have just had a chance to speak with emergency managers this morning, and they tell us while they're continuing to monitor the wind, they're also paying attention to power outages. At least 1,000 people have already reported outages in some of the eastern locations here throughout the Tampa Bay area. This includes not only Davenport, but Haines City, Florida, as well as Winter Haven, Florida, too. Finally, emergency managers are urging people who live in mobile homes seek more reliable shelter. And so far, we've seen hundreds of people doing that throughout the county, and we'll keep monitoring it through the day. Guys, back to you.
All right, Shayla Reeves reporting live for us. Thank you, Shayla. Be careful.
All right, the time is now almost 5 minutes to the top of the hour, and Hurricane Matthew hovering over the coast of Florida, the deadly storm unleashing strong winds and pounding rains.
Florida Governor Rick Scott issuing a dire warning.
If you're in an evacuation zone, get out. This is not something you should take a chance with.
Our live team coverage in the crosshairs of Matthew continues up next. You're watching Fox and Friends First. It is Friday, October 7th, and this is a Fox News alert. Monster Hurricane Matthew bearing down on Florida right now. You are looking live at Florida as the heart of the storm slams the southern states.
More than 26 million Americans now in the path of the deadly storm as it makes its way up the East Coast after killing more than 300 people in Haiti and devastating the Caribbean.
Florida, Georgia, both Carolinas already under a state of emergency, and with winds up to 120 miles per hour, more than 300,000 people are already without power in Florida, a number only expected to grow with the potential of storm surges up to 10 feet.
Florida Governor Rick Scott issuing a dire warning that this is no joke.
If you're in an evacuation zone, get out. This is not something you should take a chance with. Time's running out. Leave. There's no excuses. Evacuate, evacuate, evacuate.
To have someone drive by this morning and go, you have to leave, and there's going to be a 20-foot wall of water in your house, it was pretty scary.
Well, right now, the eye of the storm, a Category 3, now hovering near the eastern coast of Florida.
We have live Fox News team coverage for you from Florida to Georgia this morning.
But let's begin with senior meteorologist Janice Dean in the Weather Center tracking the latest. Some new information.
Yes, we just got the 5 a.m. advisory. Still a Category 3 storm, 120 mile per hour sustained winds with higher gusts, and the pressure is still very low, which indicates that this is a very strong storm. And it's been a major hurricane now for a week, which is almost unprecedented. Category 3 or higher is what we categorize a major hurricane. So let's take a look at this. This is making its closest brush to Florida that it has in its lifespan. So 45 miles east of Cape Canaveral, and if it were to make a landfall, that would be historic. That has never happened before across the space coast of Cape Canaveral. So let's take a look at the latest track. So the closest brush it's making right now is happening. And then we think it makes a very close hug of North Carolina and, Georgia and then the Carolinas. But again, don't focus on this because the nuances of this storm are something that we can't forecast. The wobbles of the, to the east and to the west, that's something that's very hard to forecast. So this is sort of a general cone. As we go further out in time, Saturday and Sunday coming very close to these vulnerable beaches of the Carolinas as maybe a strong Category 2, Category 1 hurricane. The storm surge and the flooding is going to be an issue, and the days of hurricane force winds that could potentially affect the coastline. And then we watch this move into the Atlantic on Monday and then perhaps make a recurve. But that's, that's 5 days out. Right now, 120 mile per hour sustained winds. It is literally just offshore of Cape Canaveral here, ladies, and I'm seeing hurricane force winds of over 80 miles per hour along the coastline. And again, the storm surge, that's one of the biggest threats from this, 6 to 11 feet. That would be devastating for northern Florida as well as Georgia. So storm surge, flooding, winds. We're not done with Matthew yet.
Stay safe for sure. Janice, you mentioned the coast of North Carolina. I have an aunt up there that's keeping an eye on it as well. So
yeah,
Janice,
this is going to be their story next, the Carolinas and Georgia.
Great. We'll check in with you shortly. Thank you, Janice.
Yep.
Well, just north of Melbourne in Daytona, streets are already under water. The worst yet to come with a storm surge, as you heard Janice mention, of at least 11 feet expected.
Let's turn now to Leland Vittert. He's live with the Daytona Beach Police Chief. Leland.
Ladies, good morning. The rain has certainly gotten a lot more significant over the past hour or so. I want to bring in Chief Chitwood of the Daytona Beach Police, soon to be Volusia County Sheriff. Chief, give us a sense. Earlier you said it's not a matter of if but when people die in this storm. Is it still that serious?
That's the way we feel right now. I mean, the way we're seeing the weather reports is whether the eye wobbles inland or outland, out to the sea, is going to make a huge difference for us.
Give us a sense. I mean, we're 100 yards from the beach. How bad is it compared to how you've seen things in the past?
This is probably one of the worst storms in the last 10 years that we've seen, and we have not seen the eye come near us yet. That's supposed to happen around 2 o'clock this afternoon. Around 8 a.m. is when we're supposed to see the hurricane force winds come in. As you can see, they're picking up. The rain's picking up. We've got some trees and power lines down now. So we're hanging in there and hoping that this thing turns a little bit further out to the east, which will give us a little bit of break.
So fair to say this is the beginning of the beginning.
This is the beginning of the beginning.
And even if as we look behind you, this is still pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, still, we're looking at 45-mile-an-hour winds right now. You're looking at the rain. You're looking at the tidal surge hasn't hit yet. We have high tide coming. You know, we ask everybody to stay off the streets, and hopefully we're going to keep power here. Right now we have no power outages, which is great. A few down trees, a few down power lines, but the worst is yet to come.
How bad is that combination? Janice Dean has been talking a lot about that it's not so much the wind, which obviously is the number to talk about, but it's that storm surge. And we have this delicate dance going on between the storm surge and high tide both hitting at the same time.
It's going to be like a flash flood from what they're telling us. You may see nothing now, and within a matter of minutes, you can have 5 feet of water.
What does that mean for your police officers? I know that you've called in 20-hour shifts and those kinds of things, but what does that kind of danger mean for them?
You can't get caught in that current. We are basically going to be on lockdown on high ground when that situation comes about. We won't be able to get to you. That's what the importance was of evacuating.
You know, at 6 o'clock last night, we were seeing people out on the beach taking selfies, those kinds of things. Do you get the sense that in the hours after that, as the sun went down, people heeded yours and the governor's admonitions?
I think people started to take advice as they started to see what was going on in the rest of the state of Florida, that, you know what, it's time to hunker down, or if not, evacuate.
So when we talk about the flooding, though, it's not necessarily the rain that's coming down. It's this storm surge that's coming in. Is that an issue both here out on the outer line islands and then also back on the mainland?
Yeah, it's all connected. It's all connected. We won't be able to pump water out of the mainland to get it out of there, so everything's going to come in and it's going to go back into the mainland, and we are in a bowl. Daytona Beach is basically in a bowl, so you will have areas that will fill up quickly.
This is such an unusual hurricane in that it is moving up the coast, so it's pushing the water all the way up rather than just coming inland and taking what they call a bullseye or a direct hit. Give us a sense of what that's meaning for the storm surge, that all of this water is being pushed all the way up from West Palm Beach, from Melbourne, from here.
That's why they're saying we're looking at a 12-foot storm surge, just for that reason. That water is going to be pushed in, and you have high tide on top of that, and you have the waves on top of that. It's going to create a potential hazard here.
All right. So far, no injuries?
So far, no injuries.
All right. You and your men stay safe. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. Ladies, back to you.
All right, Leland, great interview there. It looks so bad, and yet, as he said, just the beginning of this. So the intense winds, as you see there, and the torrential rain wreaking havoc in Melbourne, Florida at this hour as well.
That's where we find Phil Keating, who has been out in the brunt of it all night long. Phil, I've been here since midnight. You've been out there even longer than that. What is the situation right now?
Yeah, well, Heather, it became too dangerous, really, to be out there and totally exposed where we were at midnight. So we're up on the second floor of our hotel right now. You see how black it is. It's pure darkness all over this part of Brevard County right now along the Space Coast. Power outages, 88,000 people, households without power right now in Brevard County. We lost it about an hour ago, and there's no electricity in the whole building. The street lights are all out, so we're just battery power with the camera and the light right now. And lo and behold, one of the guys who's been living here is Lewis. Lewis, how long have you been living at this place?
4 years.
4 years, and obviously this would be the strongest hurricane you've experienced while here. This is a pretty sturdy structure. You pretty confident?
It's a real strong building. It's built for storms and hurricanes and things.
Now, you haven't slept at all tonight. What have you been doing?
Just watching TV. The lights went out, so now I'm watching my DVDs.
Yeah, there's no more television, no more cable, so it's hard to keep track unless you've got a powered-up laptop. Did you power everything up you need?
Well, you can't do anything in a storm like this. Just if you stay inside, you'll be safer. It just raises hell all night long.
And why did you choose not to drive further west, inland?
At least here you've got a highway to access to different places. If you go inland, sometimes it gets all boggled up with trees falling down and everything. It's no good.
All right. Thank you very much. Stay safe, all right? There's also been downed trees everywhere, and the governor said last night not only has about 250,000 people lost power already, the worst is yet to come for much of the northern half of the state. Take a listen to the governor.
You're going to lose power if you're on the East Coast. There's no question you will lose power. You're going to lose power. We just don't know how long. We are going to lose power. Millions of Floridians will be without power.
And the center of the storm of Hurricane Matthew now about 40 miles southeast of Cape Canaveral on the Space Coast, and that's where it looks like it may actually make landfall in the next few hours. Back to you.
Yeah, we talked to another resident there in Florida earlier this evening, and she said for Floridians, it isn't happening until it's happening, because a lot of folks like that gentleman you were just talking to.
Yeah, it's going to be a long night for a long few days, it sounds like, for many of them. Phil, thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Well, the deadly storm now front and center in the race for the White House.
Just 2 days now before the second debate, Donald Trump hits the trail showing support for people in the path of the storm, while Hillary Clinton stays behind closed doors.
Now, Peter Ducey's live for us in Washington, D.C. with the latest from the campaign trail. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Good morning, Heather and Abby. Last night, Donald Trump asked New Hampshire voters to pray for people in Florida, while Hillary Clinton tweeted this, quote, "Hurricane Matthew is a major storm. I urge everyone to follow emergency instructions and evacuate if you're told to. Stay safe, Florida. As Clinton posted that, her campaign manager was pleading with Florida officials to give Floridians more time to register to vote.
Our first priority on Hurricane Matthew is that people are safe. The one thing that we are hoping and expecting is that officials in Florida will adapt deadlines to account for the storm. The voter registration deadline in Florida is October 11th, and our hope would be that a little bit more time will be given.
That request was denied by the governor. Clinton, meanwhile, has not been on the trail for the last few days. The campaign says she's getting set for Sunday night's second debate in St. Louis, but Trump isn't so sure.
Give me a break. Do you really think that Hillary Clinton is debate prepping for 3 or 4 days? Hillary Clinton is resting, okay? She's resting. She wants to build up her energy for Sunday night. And you know what? That's fine. But the narrative is so foolish. I'm here for one reason. I love the people of New Hampshire. I said I was going to be here, and I'm here.
Trump is taking a rare weekday off the trail today to study up for Sunday's debate. So he and Clinton both getting ready. And we're told now that the St. Louis event on Sunday night is going to go on as scheduled. There were some questions about whether or not it would be postponed or canceled because of what's going on in the Southeast and Matthew's impact. That will not be the case. We learned overnight from the Commission on Presidential Debates. Back to you.
Yeah, not to mention Florida is such an important state.
And as we saw with Hurricane Sandy, it definitely impacts the elections.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, the time now is 10 minutes after the top of the hour, and dozens of Afghani soldiers training in the U.S. vanished. Now, some brand new concerns about our national security. Pete Hegseth is here live to weigh in.
Plus, jam-packed roadways aren't the only concern for people trying to escape the storm. Thousands of flights are now grounded. We are live. And we are back with a Fox News alert. Hurricane Matthew is bearing down on Florida at this hour. The monster storm is just miles off the coast of Melbourne and could make landfall in just hours. Cape Canaveral is now facing a possible direct hit. Winds are already more than 80 miles per hour at Kennedy Space Center. 300,000 people are right now without power, and it could be weeks before it is turned back on. Experts say the storm has a Sandy-like surge, and the results could be catastrophic. And the hurricane, as you can imagine, causing travel chaos. Thousands of flights already canceled and train services suspended. Cheryl Casone from our sister network Fox Business is here with that part of our coverage. Cheryl, I cannot even imagine the chaos.
Yeah, good morning. Well, and the numbers have kind of been changing over the last few moments. So let's go through a few things that we're looking at here on the business side. We're looking at hundreds of flights that already have been canceled. More to come today. We're looking at about 3,000 flight cancellations. Again, though, those airport closures are going to affect that. And I'll get to that in a second. Delta had already canceled 130 flights yesterday in anticipation of the storm, and they say 150 at least are going to be canceled today, but that could all change, in particular in the Miami area because of where the storm is now tracking. Southwest had canceled 60 flights. American cut service to areas of Florida affected by the storm. But again, all of that is going to change today as the airlines are tracking the storm, just like all of us are here. Now, for Miami travelers, you may have better luck, but Orlando, Jacksonville in particular, those are going to be problematic. United canceled 180 flights from Wednesday through Saturday. In particular, they're looking at those areas, but they are clear right now that those plans can change. If you're scheduled to fly, check in with the airline before you go to the airport. That's a national story right now because when flight cancellations happen in one part of the country, it affects the entire country. All the airlines waiving cancellation and change fleets. We've got several airport closures to tell you about really quick. I want to show these to you. You've got Orlando right now. Miami, although I think Miami is going to be up and running pretty quick here, guys. They're technically open. They kind of instituted like a flight stoppage, but that I'm pretty sure is going to lift now. Fort Lauderdale, same situation. They had closed it, but I think you're going to see good news there. Palm Beach and Tampa, other airports that are specifically affected. Now, it's not just air travel. Norwegian Cruise Lines has diverted ships away from the Bahamas. Carnival Cruise Lines is monitoring its ship routes. They may make some changes today. CSX and Norfolk Southern among the railroad companies that are moving equipment out of the areas that deliveries can so deliveries won't be affected. But that's the problem. If you're waiting on some mass shipments by rail, by air, you're going to have issues in the Florida area. FedEx, UPS also, a lot of cancellations. There's going to be some package problems down there. Florida hospitals are either closing or modifying their staffing levels. In Miami, which seems to be avoiding the full run of Matthew, Jackson Health System had closed its ambulatory care centers and their rehab outpatient clinics ahead of the storm. Baptist Health keeping ER and the main hospital up. Cape Canaveral began evacuations on Tuesday, by the way, that hospital. Now, Walt Disney World taking the rare step of shutting down and canceling most of its Halloween events. SeaWorld closing 3 theme and water parks. Universal Orlando is going to be closed today. As for power outages, and this is changing, we're monitoring a couple of websites, Florida Power and Light being in particular one of them, but at this point we're looking at about 300,000 folks with that power. But that southern part of the state, guys, I'll send it back to you. Florida Power and Light saying that they're optimistic at this point about getting power up in the southern part of the state. Back to you.
Only the 4th time that Walt Disney World is closed down. Thank you, Cheryl.
You bet.
Well, nearly 4 dozen Afghan troops training in the U.S. have vanished in less than 2 years. So why are they going AWOL, and is this a threat to our security? Pete Hegseth is a Fox News contributor and an Iraq and Afghanistan war veteran, and he joins us now with his reaction to this. You know, we're bringing this to people's attentions this morning because it really is shocking when you say that, but this is something that you're familiar with.
Very much indeed. It's shocking, but it's something that's been going on for quite some time. I was a trainer in Afghanistan in 2011, 2012. This was a concern of ours when we sent Afghans either to Europe or the United States. Because you got to remember, in the mindset of some of these Afghans, they're stuck inside an intractable war where the Taliban is gaining ground and gaining momentum, and the Americans are going to send them to Europe or the United States to train, and a lot of them see it as their opportunity to get out, to desert. It's not that they're looking to infiltrate like ISIS has with refugees. They're looking to get out of Afghanistan and live in a peaceful country. So in the United States, there's actually a pipeline in some ways of when these guys run off the base, they find somebody, almost an Underground Railroad type situation that moves them across the country and then out to Canada or elsewhere so they can get out. Now, we should still be concerned about the threat because the Taliban has infiltrated the Afghan army as well. So there's no reason to believe that couldn't happen.
People hear this, you know, they're disappearing and we don't know where they are. Yep. Is it a threat to national security?
It could be. It could be. And think about it. If we can't vet these guys, we've been training for years in the Afghan army to make sure their loyalty is to the state of Afghanistan. Can we really vet the Syrian refugees who we know nothing about?
Good point.
I mean, these are guys that we've been working with every single day, some of which we're going to Ranger School, one of the most elite schools in the United States Army. They're there to do that because we think they're that good of an Afghan soldier, and they leave. So part of the reason also, this underscores how dicey the situation is in Afghanistan. The Taliban controls more ground today than they have since 2001. We are losing ground, and these Afghan troops are deserting in rates that are higher than we've seen in the past.
Right, and taxpayer money being spent, a lot of it, what, $60 billion?
$60 billion on training of Afghan forces, and we're behind where we've been before in Afghanistan.
All right,
it's unfortunate.
Pete, thank you so much. We'll keep our eye on this story. Abby?
That is alarming. Thanks, Heather. Right, the time is now 20 minutes after the hour, and a race to escape in Georgia as a state of emergency is declared overnight.
When all of a sudden the house starts coming down out there at the beach or something, then you start wondering, well, you know, maybe I made the wrong decision. Well, that's too late.
We are live in Savannah, where mass evacuations are now underway. Stick with us.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends First. In coastal Georgia, residents there are being urged to leave immediately as Hurricane Matthew threatens to slam the state with a devastating 11-foot storm surge.
Homes and businesses now boarded up, and with just a few hours until impact, officials say waiting out the storm could have deadly consequences.
Caroline Shively is live for us in Savannah with some new information on evacuations there. So, Caroline, what's the latest?
Those evacuations begin once again at 6 a.m. They'll have the buses running here in Savannah, but they are cutting off at noon. They say they need time for their first responders to get home, to get their families, and for them to go inland. They were running all day yesterday. We were under a mandatory evacuation here east of 95. What folks are worried about here, of course, the winds that are now whipping through Florida and the water, but the storm surge is what this state cannot prepare for. It is low-lying. We have many river inlets, and that could be the problem. Here's how the mayor explained it.
Storm surge is what everybody talks about, and we don't know that because we hadn't seen it. But everybody that has ever been in it talks about how, you know, what it can do and how destructive it can be, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's the big deal.
about it here because there hasn't been a hurricane of any kind since 1979. That was Hurricane David, a very weak hurricane. We could be looking possibly at a major hurricane here. The last time one of those hit the the Georgia coast was in 1898. So they have no idea what to expect from this storm, and that's why they are telling people get out now before it's too late. Heather and Abby?
Yeah, Caroline, you're talking about that storm surge. Consider this, during Hurricane Katrina, 1,500 people lost their lives because of the storm surge. So
yeah, you got to take it seriously. All right, Caroline, thank you.
Yeah, you're right.
At the time now, 25 minutes after the top of the hour, monster Hurricane Matthew barreling towards the East Coast with more than 26 million people in its path and more than 300,000 already without power.
Holy Toledo. I guess we're going to lose power.
Holy Toledo, Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina, all under a state of emergency at this hour. Our live Fox News coverage up and down the East Coast continues next.